Hey everybody, so this week we're going to talk about personal survival. And so I'm going to share just kind of some tips and some tricks on things that you guys can do to actually be a little bit better prepared in your everyday life, and on some different activities, whether they're going to class or going hiking or doing something for the weekend, or just whatever else you're going to do outside. Some things that are going to help you be better prepared and that will help you out in your just kind of everyday life. So one of the things that I got feedback on last semester when I taught this class is people wanted a little bit more like hands-on survival tips and tricks and things like that, as opposed to the things that I wanted to talk about. And so I figured for each one of these videos I would actually throw in, just kind of like one neat little survival skill. And so this one I'm going to talk about fire starting, and so I'm going to pause my video here and we'll jump out to my backyard and I will show you guys how to use a flint and steel and start a fire. Alright, hey everybody, so a lot of you guys expressed an interest in how to start a fire without matches, and so I'm actually just going to show you guys, one of many ways, and this is actually a pretty simple way. And so I'm going to use a fire striker here, right? So basically a flint and steel. And so this one is designed to work with this knife here. And so a couple of quick tips. So a lot of times you'll see kids and they'll use the sharp side of the knife to actually strike the steel. That's only going to dull your knife. So you actually want to use the back side of the knife. And this knife here has actually got a little striker built into it. And so a couple of things that can help you out, right? So a lot of times you'll see people and they walk around and they go like this and they just are firing sparks into the air like that. And that's all good fun, but you're not actually going to start a fire by doing that. And so the first thing you're going to need is actually need something that's flammable. And you could use some tissue, some cotton balls. I just have a little bit of a paper towel here, or any like dried leaves or anything like that. And so again, people will stand all the way up here and they'll just kind of aim sparks at it, and that's not really going to help you out. So a couple of quick tips. If you take the edge of your knife and you actually put some notches in your striker, and you'll actually get more friction, and that's actually going to make you have some better sparks. And then you want to take your striker and you want to put it all the way down in the paper towel or whatever you're trying to light, and just firm, slow pressure. Did we get it? We almost have it. There we go. And look at that. It's kind of bright out here, so it's hard to see the flames, but you can see that the paper is burning. So that only took us a couple of seconds to actually start that fire. Okay, welcome back to my garage. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little fire starting thing. If you're wondering about the knife that I use, this is actually the knife. It's called the Gerber Ultimate Knife. You can buy them on Amazon. They're about $40. And this is actually one of my favorite outdoor knives that I've ever had. And it's got a couple of neat features. One, the knife actually stays pretty secure in the case. It's got a Velcro that you can actually take the knife out. And so, right, it's got a sharp blade. It's got a serrated bit. At the bottom, it's actually got a hammer for hammering, which is actually a pretty neat feature. It has these tie-down loops here, so if you actually wanted to lash it to a stick for making a spear or anything like that, or if you had to cut something out of reach, you could actually tie a rope right through it. At the bottom, it's actually got another hole. You can put a longer rope on it. So if you're ever doing anything in the water with your knife, you should always have a rope on it in case you drop it, because this will sink very well. But right now, it's got a little bit of a lanyard, and at the bottom there is a whistle. And having the ability to signal people with a loud whistle while you're out in the wild is actually a really handy thing to have. The other thing that the case has right down here at the bottom is a fire striker, and so it stays in pretty well. But one of the things I recommend with this knife is you actually just take a short amount of cord and put a little cord on this and tie that cord to the case. So just if you've got this outside of your bag or on your belt or something like that and you're walking along and this falls out, you're not going to lose it. And then the last thing that the knife has that I think is actually really cool is on the inside of the case there is a sharpening stone, so you can actually keep your knife sharp without any additional tools. And so all that is in one single package. Not a paid advertisement or anything, but the Gerber company, they do guarantee their products for life. I've had a couple of their knives, and I had one even just kind of a knife pouch broke on me, and I asked if that was included, and they said yes. And so they actually sent me two knife pouches to replace the one that it actually ripped. So they're actually a pretty good company. The other thing I want to just kind of talk about on making fires is I used a flint and steel, and people are like, well, what if you're lost in the woods and you don't have any of that stuff? And the idea behind this week's topic is that so you're not lost in the woods without any of that stuff. And because like if you have a lighter, that weighs next to nothing, and even if you don't smoke or anything like that, just toss it in your backpack and you always have the ability to make fire. And just so you know, I actually took a class one time where we had to make a bow drill and light a fire that way. And even even making this, you'll see they gave us this leather string. And they said, well, this string works the best. But I've never actually carried any kind of leather string with me in my life, and I've never found leather string in the woods. And so it was actually a really challenging thing. And so we had to make this, and then we had to make the drill and all that stuff. And I saved my bow. I don't know what happened to the rest of it, but it actually was a lot of work and it took a lot of time. Whereas if I just carried something with me that I know when I'm ever outside I have the ability to make fire, I don't even have to worry about that, because even now that I know how to do that, it's not something that I want to do on a regular basis. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different kinds of bags. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on the idea of a bug out bag, and I know a few of you guys wanted to do your final projects on bug out bags, and that's totally fine. And so we'll take a look at kind of a typical style bag that people use for bug out bags, and why it's not necessarily right for me, but it may be right for other people. And so, some people really like them, some people don't really like them. So we'll talk about that. And then what we're going to talk about, we will talk about your outdoor essentials. So basically the stuff that you should take with you on any outdoor trip. I will show you guys my everyday bag, so the backpack that I carry around campus. And so if you ever see me at FGCU and you see me carrying my backpack, you'll know exactly what I have in it. And then I'm going to show you my field trip bag. And so this is a model version of a bag that I make any of my students take on any of my field trip classes, so things that they should have with them out in the field. But before we actually talk about any of that stuff, the first thing I want to talk about is actually training. And so if you guys ever have the opportunity to learn any kind of new skills, that's going to be invaluable to you in a survival situation. So obviously, like, there's first aid, CPR training, wilderness first aid training. So any of those things, and you ever have the opportunity to take any of those classes, please do so, right? They'll actually be really helpful skills. But the thing that a lot of people don't think about is like the real practical skills that not everybody knows anymore. And so knowing how to cook, right? Knowing how to bake, knowing how to sew, right? Because if you're in a survival situation, your stuff breaks. Do you have a sewing kit? Do you know how to repair your own gear? I will tell you that I've sewn tents and backpacks and pants and stuff, especially on like extended hiking trips and things like that, where something rips, you have the option of dealing with it or fixing it. Knowing how to garden, knowing how to weld. Do you know how to fix your own car, change your own oil, or if your car breaks? Do you have a bicycle? And because one of the things that we'll talk about later in the semester when we're looking at World War Z, we'll actually talk about how important bicycles are in a survival situation. And I think that's really neat. But so, do you know how to fix and maintain your own bicycle? And so, skills like that super important. And then, like, other things like, just kind of repairing your house, and knowing how to do a little bit of plumbing or any kind of skills like that. And a really great resource for that stuff to learn that thing now is, if you watch YouTube, because there's basically YouTube videos on just about every kind of skill imaginable. And so if you find a YouTube channel and it's got these skills on it and the person looks like they somewhat know what they're talking about, you can actually learn a lot of really cool stuff out there on YouTube. The next thing I want to talk about is planning and preparation. And so if this was something that we learned back in Boy Scouts, and they called it the 6 P's of survival. And so I heard it in Boy Scouts for the first time, but then I actually looked in some other survivals and training manuals, and they have the same kind of thing. And so it's the 6 P's of survival is prior planning and preparation prevents poor performance. And so if you think about that, right, if you plan ahead and you do it appropriately and you know what you're doing and you know what you need and you know that you have everything you need and you know that you have extra stuff in case of an emergency and you know how to work the stuff that you have, you're going to be in a good situation. And so one of the things that I always recommend when planning for any kind of outdoor activity is find a clear spot. Maybe it's your kitchen table, maybe it's your bed. Lay everything out that you're going to pack, and see what's there, see what you're missing, see what that you have that you don't need, and then pack your bags. See how it all fits together. Unpack it, go through it again, and pack it one more time. And that's something that I've always done whenever I've gone on a trip, and it's worked out pretty well for me. The other thing that you should have when you're going on any kind of a trip is an emergency plan of action. And so this is basically, not only letting people know where you're going and how long you're going to be, right? But, it takes it a few steps further. Right, so you should definitely have, the dates of where you're going, the location, the people, what are your travel plans, right? But then if you think of a little bit further, right, are you on any kind of medication? Is anybody in your group on any kind of medication, and what kind of medications are there? The make and model of your vehicle, right? So if I were to, get lost somewhere and my wife, called the police and said, hey, I know he went here, and I know my wife knows what kind of car I have, but if she said he's got some kind of a black SUV, right, well, that helps a little bit. They're looking for a black SUV, but if she knows that I have a black Toyota 4Runner and she knows the license plate number of my SUV, right, that's going to make it a lot easier for police to narrow it down, whether it's just somebody hiking in a location with the black SUV or if it was my black SUV that they found. Copies of important documents like your ID cards and your insurance cards. Emergency contact information for everybody in your party. If you have a phone number for a local ranger station or somebody who's in charge of the park where you're going to or the area where you're going to, include that as well. And a lot of things that people, kind of forget about is their pets, right? So I have a family at home, so, my pets aren't going to be left unattended. But if I leave, say I had a couple of cats that lived in my house and I lived by myself, and I went hiking for 2 days, but I ended up getting lost and, nobody found me for 2 weeks, and I didn't make any kind of plans for like, hey, if I get lost or I don't come back, somebody please go feed my cats. Now my cats are left for 2 weeks in the house by themselves. So, do you have pets with you on this trip, or do you have pets left at home? And, so just kind of things to think about where if you get lost, who's going to take care of everything, what needs to happen in your absence. And so I think this emergency plan of action is actually really important, and a lot of people, don't take that far enough when they plan for a trip. Okay, so let's take a quick minute and we'll talk about the idea of a bug-out bag. And the idea of a bug-out bag is that you have a bag packed and you keep it with you at all times, either in your house or your car, and it's got basically everything you need to survive the end of the world stashed into this bag. And so it's you know, some people really like them, other people don't. I'm kind of in the camp of that. I think they're a little bit unnecessary because I think we should be more so prepared for everyday stuff than end of the world situations. And in an end of the world situation, um, I'm not really going to want to leave my house because that's basically where I have all my supplies and everything else. And at the very least, right, it's not just me anymore. It's also my wife and my stepson and our animals. And so again, at the very least, if we had to leave our home, we would be a pretty tight fit to just cram everything into at least one vehicle. So the idea of just having a single bag prepared and ready to go isn't really something that's going to work for me and my family. But I can see if you're a college student and you're living in the dorms and you know, something were to happen, like maybe a hurricane or something like that, and you had to evacuate and you had to make your way home, uh, might not be such a bad idea. But in general, having, you know, one single large backpack with all your stuff in it at all times ready to go, I think is a little bit excessive, and I think it's a little bit unnecessary. The other thing is that a lot of people don't have, you know, 8 pocket knives and 8 flashlights, for one for their bug out bag and one for their everyday bag. And so I want to actually show you some of, I think, what are more practical backpack situations and, you know, things that we carry around. You'll notice that a lot of the things I show in the videos actually kind of are interchangeable between one bag to the next because, again, like you, I don't carry around 8 different pocket knives and 8 different flashlights. And so those are just, you know, some thoughts on bug out bags. And so if you're wondering about this bag, right? They're typically these larger style bags. A lot of times they're, you know, black and they've got a lot of straps on them and things like that. To actually just fill this bag up, what I did is I actually put my everyday backpack and my field trip backpack. I mashed them in there to make it actually look like I had stuff in this bag. Okay, next let's talk about the outdoor essentials. And so if you're a Boy Scout or you went to the Boy Scout program, this will actually sound pretty familiar. But a lot of other outdoor organizations use the same thing. So the very first thing I want to talk about is hydration. And so I always recommend bringing a reusable water bottle with you. And if you don't have a reusable water bottle, it's, you know, always a good idea, you know, stop and buy a plastic bottle. And anybody that knows me knows that I really hate plastic water bottles, but I would much rather one of my students drink water out of a plastic water bottle than suffer the ill effects of dehydration. Another option is with these hydration pouches, and so this will actually fit inside your backpack and you can fill it up with water. They come in different sizes, and you can actually just kind of sip water continuously through this as you drink. When people ask how much water should they have, right, well, the correct answer is always enough water for the time that you're going to be out there. And so you should definitely be drinking, you know, several liters of water a day, depending on the temperature, the sunlight, how much activity you're doing, your own needs for your own body. So you should definitely be drinking water continuously when you're doing any kind of outdoor activity, especially here in Florida when it's super hot. And so if you're in one of my classes, I always recommend that my students always have at least 2 liters of water with them for a field trip, and that's, you know, being outside for like 2 to 3 hours, doing, you know, walking around and kind of, you know, on a field trip. All right, the next thing that I'm going to recommend is, right, some trail food. So any kind of, you know, granola bar, protein bar, things like that. So I've got a, you know, a Cliff Bar and then a Cliff Energy Shot. So it's basically, you know, just a little bit of extra energy for you if you're out on a field trip or doing any kind of outdoor activity. So you have enough, you know, enough food to keep you going, especially as you're burning through those calories. The other reason that I always carry that stuff in my bag is if I ever run into somebody that, you know, is not doing so well, maybe their blood sugar has dropped and, you know, they need some calories, having something like that in your bag to offer somebody else is also a really nice thing. All right, so the next thing on the list is sun protection, right? So we live in Florida here where I'm filming the video. And so, you know, having some sunscreen. Sunscreen is super important, right? Because you can get some nasty sunburns here in Florida. And when we talked about, right, how to deal with situations or things that can make a bad situation worse, right? If you're in a survival situation and then you have a nasty sunburn, right, it's actually just going to make your you know, everything harder and a little bit more difficult. So, just having some sunscreen, and you could buy these at the grocery store for like $1, and it never hurts to throw a couple of these in your car, throw one in your bag. So just have one of these with you, and it can actually really help you out if you're stuck out in the sun. In addition to that, right, so a pair of sunglasses, right, some kind of a hat, right. In Florida, right, a wide brim hat is actually going to go a long way to keep sun off of your head. I spent some time in the desert this summer, and so this was the hat that I wore, and it's actually nice because it's got some ventilation on it. Other things that really help with the sun are like these, Columbia style shirts. And so this is a real old one I've had for a long time. I keep in my field bag. But what I really recommend for my students is that if you go to Goodwill and you go buy a long sleeve men's shirt that's like, one or two sizes too large for you, and buy a light colored one, so it could be like light blue, light yellow, whatever. They're like $4.99 at the most. You take it, you could crumple it up, right, just like this, throw it in the trunk of your car, throw it in your backpack. And so, where this really comes in handy is if the sun's burning your skin, you could pull this out, roll it down, it'll cover you up. But other things, right, if you're a little bit cold, right, it's an extra layer of clothing. If the mosquitoes are really bad, right, you could roll it up, now the mosquitoes can't bite your arms. Right? And so you only paid $4 for this, or $5 if you bought it from Goodwill. So then, right, it's no big loss. If it gets muddy, it gets dirty, you rip it, you wear it outside, it gets wet, whatever, you only paid a couple of dollars for it. And so, that's much more desirable than spending, $50 to $80 for a Columbia shirt. All right, so the next one on the list is your first aid kit. So again, right, depending on who you are, how many people are in your group, what you're doing, depends on what kind of first aid kit you should be using. I actually really like these like smaller, pre-packaged first aid kits. And then this is the one that I actually use when I go on field trips, so I bring this one with me. And in addition to your first aid kit, I always recommend hand sanitizer, especially now that we've got the COVID pandemic going on. So hand sanitizer, definitely a good thing before. Right now, it's just an added bonus. So we've got our first aid kit. Right. Next, we need some kind of a flashlight. So you could use a headlamp. This is actually just a little flashlight that I keep in my bag. But one thing with a flashlight is make sure that the light works, and then make sure you have either extra batteries or you have fresh batteries in it, because nothing's worse than showing up for a weekend camping trip where there's no option to get more batteries and your flashlight doesn't work, right? Because either the bulb's dead or you don't have enough batteries. So make sure you have batteries for your flashlight. All right, the next category is navigation. And right, we were all like, well, I've got my cell phone. My cell phone's got a GPS on it, right? And that's great. And I actually use my cell phone for GPSing all the time, especially when I go hiking. But it really drains the battery sometimes. And so, right, we have older style GPSs like this. This will work in places that your cell phone won't. But I think a more important skill that's really important for us to use is to know how to use a compass and also a map. And so if you look at the list, it'll say GPS, map, and compass. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready for a weekend here in Florida. I've got my compass and I've got my map. And if you notice, the map that I have says Arizona. And so when you're using a map, make sure it's a map of the correct area where you're going, because this Arizona map is going to be no good to me here in Florida. All right, the next category is some kind of a pocket knife. And so I definitely would recommend something like this as opposed to something like this, because right, this is actually going to be a lot more light, and this has actually got a lot more functionality as well. And so this is a small Leatherman knife, and a couple of cool things, right? So it's got a couple of common hex sizes here, so if you wanted to unscrew a nut, it's got a hammer on the bottom, it's got a clip here, you can clip it on your belt, you could clip it on this way. This one actually has a fire starter here, it's got a mini knife sharpener here. It's not super effective, but it works. It's got a regular blade, it has a serrated blade for cutting stuff. And one of the things that I actually really use all the time is the pliers. And so sometimes something gets stuck. This one actually has a wire cutter and a wire stripper inside of it. But the other nice thing is if you are, maybe cooking something outside and it's too hot to touch with your hand and you need to pick it up and you're trying to, use a leaf or a t-shirt or something like this, if you just use the pliers, you could pick something hot up and not burn your fingers. And so I end up using this all the time. If you've ever taken a class with me, I usually use the blade on here for cutting, large sheets of paper. But this is actually just, a real simple knife. I keep this in my everyday bag for, like carrying something around every day. I don't recommend anything much larger than this. Knives like this, they do have their purpose, but, they're not great for carrying around. So they're good for like at camp. I keep one of these in my car, stuff like that. Next is fire starting. So you should have some ability to start a fire, and that kind of goes back to what I was originally talking about in the video. Yeah, if we needed to, we could make a bow drill and, sit and take hours to start a fire. But if we had a flint and steel, that would actually make things a lot easier. And so I actually have this fire starting kit that I put together, and we'll take a look at what I have in it. So the very first thing, everything is in a plastic bag, so if it was to get wet, it would stay dry. And then I actually took one of these silica gel packets in there, and I threw that in there, so if any moisture actually did get in there, this would absorb some of it. I have a handful of cotton balls, because these cotton balls will actually help keep things dry. They won't keep things dry. They will actually catch on fire pretty easily. I have a little bit of paper towel, and so this can actually be used as a paper towel if you need it, or for fire starting. I have a lighter, like I said. These things cost almost nothing. They don't weigh all that much, and so, it's no big deal to put one in your bag. I have a pack of matches, and then I have an additional fire striker, and so I could use this with, any knife that would strike on it. So that's my fire starting kit. So I keep that again in my bag. So if I ever need to start a fire, right, I've got the lighter, I've got the matches, I've got some things that will start a fire. Worst case scenario, all of that gets wet, the lighter gets smashed. This thing will continue to work even if it gets wet. It's not going to get smashed. And so, I have multiple options on, being able to start a fire. Another thing, and if you don't know, hand sanitizer is actually really flammable. And so if you're trying to start a fire and you've got some hand sanitizer with you and everything is really wet outside, you could actually ignite this hand sanitizer very easily because the alcohol in it will burn. So the next thing I want to talk about in terms of, your outdoor essentials is some extra clothing. And so, again, I keep this in my everyday backpack, what I have in here, and it's all inside of a Ziploc bag to help keep it dry if my bag were to get wet. But what I do have in here, we're going through the pandemic, so I do have a mask in here, so I always have an extra mask with me. I have a bandana, and so these bandanas are infinitely useful for, for first aid, for, an extra mask, for a napkin, keeping your head, cool, or, if it's hot out, you can actually dip this in water and you can put it on your head. It'll actually help keep your head cool. So bandanas, there's a whole lot of things you could do with them. I keep a pair of mechanics gloves in my bag, and so these are useful, right? If it's ever a little bit chilly, it can actually keep your hands warm. But if you have to, pick something up that's hot or kind of sharp, or anything that's kind of nasty, you could actually pick these up. I think these came from Publix. They were like $6. You can pick these up pretty cheap, and again, they'll actually help protect your hands in a lot of situations. And then the last thing I have in this bag is a rain jacket, because again, I do live in Florida. It rains a lot in the summer. And so the last category of outdoor essentials is they call it shelter. And so one of the real simple things that you could bring for shelter is one of these emergency blankets. And so buy one that actually folds out to a significant size. They they're almost free. You could buy one for just a couple of dollars, weighs almost nothing, and this thing can easily save your life in a survival situation. And so when we do the next video for next week, the practical tip I'll actually show you guys is I'll actually tell you how to make a shelter out of this and a couple of trekking poles. And so this was the last thing that I threw in for outdoor essentials. And so whenever I go on an outdoor activity, I always take this one with me. This one, I bought this one at Walmart. I think it was $12. I have a nicer set of trekking poles, but I actually like this one better because it's got this real simple mechanism on here where you could extend it. It doesn't have the springs where you have to twist it and stuff like that. So it never gets jammed up. If it gets wet, the water just drains right out of it instead of the insides kind of rusting out and stuff like that. So this one's actually super cheap, and I don't always bring this for me, right? Most of the time I don't need it. But I do a lot of field trips with students, and one of the things is, every now and then there's a student that's kind of like really struggling, and sometimes there's a student that's just, really unsure of themselves or really uncomfortable, and just having, something like this helps them out. And so, I'll use it as I'm walking along. If I'm not using it, I can actually just, strap it to my back pretty easily. But it's definitely a cool thing to have to, hand off to somebody who's having a hard time when they're walking along on a field trip. And so if you ever see me on a field trip, it's not because, I'm limping around. It's because I bring this actually, in case a student does need it. It's also super handy to get spiders out of the way. But I will show you how to build a shelter out of one of these and one of these. Alright, so those are our outdoor essentials. Alright, next I'm going to show you guys my everyday bag. So this is the backpack that I carry every day, and so I'm not doing any of this for the video. This is exactly what I carry in my bag. The only thing that's not in this bag that's normally in there is my iPad, which I'm actually filming on, but I'll show you where I keep the iPad. And this is basically everything I keep in my bag on a daily basis. And I will tell you that, in high school I hurt my back, and so I don't like having a really heavy bag. And so, this is everything I carry. And I made a lot of conscious choices about what I have in here that's helps me out in my daily life and can keep me prepared without being super excessive in terms of the things that I carry. So the very first thing that I have on here is I have a water bottle. Depending what I'm doing for the day, sometimes I have a second one over here, but I always bring my reusable water bottle with me, and I keep it clipped in because they fall out all the time and they crash spectacularly to the floor. In this outside pocket here, I keep a couple of things, right? So I keep my ID. And so because I do wear glasses when I've started teaching, and I have to wear a mask when I teach, I found that to actually be super difficult. So I actually started wearing contacts for when I'm teaching. And so I keep all my contact stuff in there. And then because I normally wear prescription sunglasses, if I have to walk to class with my contacts in, I have just a cheap pair of sunglasses that I threw in here. So that's my outside pocket. I don't think I just have a tissue or something in there. Then let's actually jump to the main pocket of this bag. And so in the main pocket of the bag, I keep my iPad in here. I used to carry my laptop with me everywhere, but again, it got kind of heavy carrying that, and my iPad could do mostly the same stuff. So I just leave my laptop in either my office at campus or my office at home. So I keep my iPad in here, and then I just keep my papers for class and stuff there. And down in the very bottom of this bag, I actually showed this in my outdoor essentials, but this is my extra clothing here. So I do have a rain jacket, and it's saved me many times here in Florida, especially when I get out of class and I have to walk to my car or I have to walk to my office and it's raining. I have a rain jacket. I do have the extra gloves, the extra mask, and a bandana in here. And so I just keep this down in the bottom of my bag. It doesn't weigh hardly anything. And then if I ever do put anything valuable or breakable or anything, I actually have a nice cushion on the bottom of my bag to protect the stuff that's in my bag. So let's look at this next pocket here. This is actually where I've got a whole lot of stuff in here. And so like I had said, I don't carry a Bugout bag. I don't have a Bugout bag, and because I don't have 8 flashlights, but I've got the same flashlight that I showed in my outdoor essentials. I have a different flashlight that I use for camping, but it's my everyday flashlight. It comes in handy. It's super bright. So I have this flashlight. I keep some hand sanitizer in here. I keep my wallet in here. One of the things, right, you can tell the new world of the pandemic. So as an educator, if I have a student that shows up without a mask, right, I have extra masks that I can offer to my students, so everyone has a mask. I do the same thing with my field trip bag as well, so I can't have students not wearing masks on field trips, so I carry extra masks with me. I carry a small notebook just in case you ever have to write something down, your phone doesn't work, you have to write down directions or anything important, right? Small notebook is actually super important to have. This is a glasses case, and so I got this for, I think it was for free from the eye doctor, and I thought, well, this is kind of handy. And then one time I had a student leave a pair of glasses on a field trip, and I found them, and it was actually really nice to be able to put them in something like this to keep them safe. And so I just kept that in my bag. And then inside of it, I actually put a glasses cleaning kit. So it's got an alcohol wipe and a microfiber cloth, so I could actually clean my glasses if I needed to without damaging them. So I do have my pocket knife here, so I keep that clipped in there. I always keep a Cliff Bar in my bag. Again, every now and then I'll forget to bring my lunch, and so just having an extra Cliff Bar in my bag, really helps me get through the afternoon. I have a stack of my business cards that I keep in that pocket. I have some chapstick that I keep in this pocket. I have my fire starting kit that I showed you in the outdoor essentials video. I do carry that in this bag. These were actually some single-use sunscreen packets that I got at a conference one time. And again, I'm not a big fan of single-use stuff, but in an emergency situation, it can help you out. So, if I'm outside and I definitely feel like I'm getting a sunburn, I actually threw these in my bag because I feel like that's going to be a good use for them. I have one of these emergency blankets I keep in my bag. Again, it doesn't weigh much, but in an emergency situation can definitely help out. What else I got? This pocket right here, I have a whole bunch of just pens and Sharpies and dry erase markers. So basically just stuff for teaching that I've got in there. If I go a little bit further down into the bag, I actually have a pair of chopsticks that are reusable because I'm into sustainability, so I've got some reusable chopsticks here. I actually forgot they were in there, and I actually have a gift card to Dunkin' Donuts that's actually shoved in this pocket as well. Alright, so let's keep going down into the bottom of the bag. So I do have a first aid kit, so I've got a first aid kit in my backpack. Like I said, I'm big into sustainability, so I always carry this stuff with me. So I've got my reusable straw, I have a reusable spork, and actually another set of reusable chopsticks that all kind of came together in this kit. So I carry this with me because I don't like using plastic utensils. Alright, so this is actually really a cool item here. And so in a survival situation, having a cell phone that works is invaluable. And we all use our cell phones all the time, and the batteries die. And so this is actually a battery pack, and it charges anything that will charge with the USB. So I use this all the time. I could charge my iPad with this. I could charge my GoPro camera with this. I could charge my cell phone with this. So in here I have that. I've got my Apple charging port. And then the other thing that I've tossed in here is just one of these USB cube chargers. So that's in here. And then the other thing that I could do is I could actually charge my battery pack from this. And so one of the things, usually when I'm in my office and I have to charge my phone, my reminder is whenever I'm charging my phone is I'll actually pull this out and I'll plug this in, so I always have a fresh charge on this. And then just the other thing, I've got some headphones in there, and I just put them in there to help keep the cord from getting tangled with other stuff because I have a couple of cords. Other stuff in the bottom of my bag, I have, this is actually just a reusable bag, and so if I need to buy something, and instead of using a plastic bag, I keep this in there. And bonus points because this one's got a cool skull on it. I have a bag full of quarters, so if I ever need some change for anything, so I think I have about $3 in quarters that I keep in my backpack. I've got some rubber bands, and I used to have some paper clips in here, but I think I gave them to somebody. And then one last thing, I've got a bottle of eyeglass cleaner because, again, I do wear glasses, and I'm outside all the time, so my glasses get, dirt and smudge and sweat on them. And so that's my everyday bag. That's what I carry in my bag every day, and a lot of those things can definitely be invaluable if I've got some kind of emergency situation where I either need to help myself or I can use these things to help other people. Okay, hey, so let's talk about field trip bags. And if you take anyone in my class, okay, next we're going to talk about field trip bags. And so this is what I recommend that students bring on a field trip. And so this is actually my field trip bags. If you've ever taken a field class with me, you've definitely seen me with this bag. I actually really love this bag. This bag's actually been probably around the world twice by now. And so everything that I have fits into this bag. It's actually not a very large bag. And so when we go on field trips, right, we don't have to carry a whole ton of stuff with us. Because, right, we're not going on any overnight excursions, and we're usually not too far from our vehicles. Inside my field trip bag, I actually have a small dry bag, and so everything that I keep goes inside this dry bag. And so if it rains or anything like that, we everything in this dry bag is actually going to stay dry. And on the outside of the dry bag, I actually just have a couple of random whistles for signaling and stuff that I've gotten. And so, really cool thing, if you've ever been on a field trip and we've been totally in the water and it looked like I was floating on my backpack, I was floating on my backpack because that dry bag is airtight, and I keep that inside here, and then I can actually just kind of cinch the straps down on this and I can float on it. So if you've seen me floating on a backpack, that's what was going on. Alright, so some things that I recommend that students bring in their field trip bag is 2 filled reusable bottles of water. And so, again, I'm big on sustainability. I'm not a big fan of plastic water bottles, and so I'd prefer that you have reusable water bottles. If you don't have a reusable water bottle or you forget one, stop at the gas station. Make sure you guys have at least 2 of these for a full field trip. I hate when students show up on field trip and they've got this much water left in the bottle for 3 hours outside in the sun in Florida. In addition to that, right, make sure you guys have some kind of a snack, right? It's going to help you out. It's going to make the day a little bit better. Even if it's just for after the field trip, right, have some kind of a snack with you. The next thing, we are going to be out in the sun, right, so I definitely recommend sun protection. So some kind of a hat, sunglasses, and sunscreen. One other thing that's really helpful on field trips is I recommend, right, just going to Goodwill. I've actually got, this is an old Columbia shirt here, but you don't have to actually spend the money for a Columbia shirt. Sometimes you can even find the Columbia shirts at Goodwill. But if you just go to Goodwill and you buy a long sleeve men's shirt that's 2 sizes too big for you, it's going to cost you $5. Get one that's white or yellow or light blue. And so this will actually keep the sun off of your skin. It's loose, it won't be too hot, but if it is cold, it'll actually be an extra layer. It will actually help keep you a little bit warmer. And the other things is, if there's a lot of mosquitoes out or something like that, you could put this on. It'll actually help keep the mosquitoes off. So something like this, you could just crumple it up like this in a little ball and throw it in the bottom of your field bag or the trunk of your car, and it will actually help you out in any situations where, maybe it's really sunny, maybe there's a lot of bugs, and maybe you're a little bit cold. Having something like this that you paid $5 for is definitely going to help you out. And then when you're done with my class, if you decide that you never ever want to go outside again, throw this in the washing machine and you can donate it back to Goodwill and somebody else can enjoy it. Alright, other things I recommend that we bring on our field trips, right? So, can of bug spray, and so I keep this in a Ziploc bag just so it doesn't leak and get bug spray on all my other stuff. So a can of bug spray will definitely help you out. I recommend bringing a small flashlight and make sure the battery works. On field trips, I recommend bringing what I call a small pocket tool. So, this is it's like a multi-tool, and it does have a knife on it, but as opposed to an actual knife, this has a whole lot of other functions as well. So a small multi-tool is definitely helpful on a field trip. On field trips, for my students, I don't recommend bringing anything like this, so no fixed blade knives, because it is a university event, so this can be construed as a weapon, and there's nothing that we're going to encounter on a field trip that recommends or needs anything like this. So on a field trip, bring this, not this. I also recommend that everybody brings their own first aid kit on a field trip, and so in addition to your first aid kit, when we are still in the midst of the pandemic, I recommend putting some hand sanitizer in here, and I also recommend putting a couple of extra masks in here, right? So I'm an instructor, and so I do have extra masks in my bag if anybody forgets one or their mask breaks or anything like that. But I recommend, bring your own, right? Make sure you guys are prepared for whatever you need. So your first aid kit, but hand sanitizer and masks are also a great addition to a first aid kit. In addition to a first aid kit, I also recommend any kind of medications that you may need to be successful. So I don't actually take any medication, but I do take a multivitamin, so I threw this in here just to remember to talk about it. But if you're allergic to anything and you need medication for it, so just basically whatever medications you may need to be successful on the field trip. Some other things that I recommend, right? So some of my field trips we do get in the water. So if you want to bring a mask and snorkel, that's fine. If you want to bring a camera, but I know most people use their cell phones. And one of the field tip pro tips that I have is always bring an extra change of clothes to leave in your car, right? So if you get wet or muddy on a field trip, having a pair of sandals or flip-flops as opposed to wearing wet sneakers all the way home, a towel to sit on, some dry shorts or a dry t-shirt, right? So those are some things to leave in your car that'll actually be super helpful on a field trip. The last thing I recommend on a field trip in my field trip survival kit is a couple of Ziploc bags. Whenever I do field trips, my field trips are always rain or shine, and so I will admit that I've had a set of car keys in my pocket, and when we got in the water at Bunch Beach on that field trip, my car keys got salt water on them, and although the key could physically start my car, the security system in my car was actually tripped because it did not recognize the microchip. So definitely couple of Ziploc bags. You can put your phone, you can put your car keys in them, and that will actually protect those items if it rains. And so that's what I recommend for field trip versions of my class. Alright everyone, to recap today, so we talked about personal survival, and so we started the video off with actually just kind of a quick how to start a fire with a flint and steel. And so I did that in my backyard, and then I tried to do a change of scenery today instead of being in my office. And it was actually really super bright in my backyard, and so the camera wasn't working, so I switched out in front of my garage. And I apologize because I think everybody in my entire neighborhood has decided to drive by my house, and they are continuing to drive by my house on a Sunday afternoon, and I have never seen this much traffic, so I think they're out just for this video. So sorry about all the car noise. In addition to that, we talked about training, right? How it's important to actually pick up, whatever skills we can, right? Even the non-exciting stuff like, sewing and cooking and baking. Those are super important survival skills. The next, we talked about planning and preparation, right? How to be, prepared for any kind of situation and write our emergency plan of action. And so when we're doing an outdoor event, it's definitely more important to be proactive instead of having a bad situation that we have to react to. So we're already prepared for whatever may come our way. We talked about a couple of different types of bags today. I talked about, Bugout bags, and how, I definitely don't think a Bugout bag is right for me and my situation. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it'll work for some people. One of the things that, I will talk about in a future video is my vehicle. And so when we had Hurricane Irma, I did not plan to leave my house during Hurricane Irma, and then they eventually evacuated my neighborhood. And so one of the things that I did for Hurricane Irma, though, even though we didn't plan to leave, is my wife and I actually packed our vehicle, and so just in case we had to go, we had everything for our family and our pets ready to go in our vehicle. And so when we did get told that we should evacuate, we were ready to go. So obviously, like, one backpack would not have worked for all of us, but the having the vehicle packed and ready to go definitely worked for my family and my situation. So again, bug out bags, I don't think they're perfect for me. I think they may work for some people, but in the long term, I don't think that's the best solution because, right, most of us have, our home or where we live, and that's where we have all of our supplies. And so that's going to be kind of our goal of, like, how do we make, where we live, our, survivor's den or whatever you want to call it, basically where we have all of our supplies, and then, using a vehicle, and that's what's going to be able to, get us around. Um, then I talked about the outdoor essentials, right? So, what you should have basically on every outdoor activity. So you should have some variation of each of those items when you go out on an outdoor activity, depending if it's, just hiking for a day, or if you're going out on a boat, or if you're going, camping for 2 weeks in the woods. Some variation on those, depending on who you are, what you're doing, what exactly you need. Then I showed you my everyday bag, and so basically what I carry around with me every day. And then the last bag that I showed off was actually my field trip bag, and that's what what I carry and what I require my students to carry on field trips. And that's a little bit less because we're never too far from our vehicles on a field trip, and I always have extra stuff with me in case somebody has an issue. But that's basically what I have my students carry on their field trips. And so the last thing, right, you guys have to make your own video this week. And so this video, what I would like you to do is I would like you to pack a bag. And this bag could be any kind of bag that you want. So it could be, your everyday bag. It could be a purse. It could be a bug out bag. It could be a bag that you want to leave in your car, right? But pack a bag. Tell us what's in it. And if there's any items that you don't have, you're not required to go out and buy them. You can actually just take a note and say, in the future, I would actually like to add these items to the bag. But pack a bag. Tell us what the bag is for and why you put those items in that bag, and that's going to be your video submission for the week. And so if you guys have any questions or anything, please let me know. Other than that, thank you guys and have a great week.